sometimes it's good to go back and look at some of the things that have completely altered your life. There's certain events that have happened or certain things that we've been through that we wouldn't be the same person today if we didn't go through those events or maybe face those situations or whatever. I could think of one such, maybe around 5 or 6 years ago when I got introduced to personal development. Now, before that, probably a few years before that, I'd probably started reading books. A lot of people think that because I own thousands of books now that I've been reading books all my life, which is probably the absolute not truth, right? Because I want to say from the age of 18 to about 30, I think I might have read one book. I could only think of one book that I read. Maybe I read more, but I can only really think of one book, and that was when I was 18. So probably for a good 10 years of my life, I didn't read any books at all. But when I really got into personal development, it just absolutely changed my life. Because here's the thing. I was looking for the recipe. I was looking for the recipe for success. And what I realized is I already knew the recipe for success because I'd already achieved success in my life. But I'm not sure if I thought that maybe the business ventures that I had before, I got lucky or, I just maybe it was a case of right place, right time. And I wasn't really sure, to be honest with you. And I've never, ever really said this to anybody before, but I had success in my first business, which was a graphic design and printing company. And then I had success again when I got into real estate. And I wasn't really sure if I could gain that success again. I think that, maybe part of me at that time convinced myself that maybe I just gotten lucky. Maybe it was just right place, right time. Maybe I was just the right person at the right time. I don't know. But here's the thing. I already knew the formula for success. It didn't change, right? All of us are here looking for the formula on how to make the perfect chocolate cake. Well, guess what? The formula don't change. The formula is the same. The recipe is the same. It never changes. Right? All we have to do is look in the recipe book. That's it. That's it. We're all spend so much of our time trying to find this recipe like it's elusive, right? Like it's just out there, like it's being hidden, right? We keep telling ourselves that, man, there's only one recipe and Duncan Hines has that recipe and they got it hidden in their safe for the chocolate cake. But guess what? That recipe is out there. All you got to do is read anybody's book that's successful, that has attained like a massive level of success or any level of success in their life. And you'll realize that the recipe is out there. It isn't being hidden from any of us. And the recipe never changes. It's just generally taking action, not being afraid of risk or not being afraid to the level where you allow it to paralyze you. Right. And just going out there and just doing it. And putting that hard work in consistently, persistently. That's the recipe for success. It never changes. It never changes. When I go back and I look at the success that I've had in the various businesses, it's the same thing, right? When I go back, I don't know too many other people that have gone in and that have studied success like myself. I want to say probably this year, I probably studied I've studied hundreds of successful people this year alone. Not even talking about my lifetime. If you want to talk about my lifetime, maybe thousands, right? And I'm talking about reading their biographies, reading articles about them, watching their documentaries, right? And it's the same thing. It doesn't matter who it is. It's all the same thing, right? All of these people did the same thing. They had some level of belief in themselves, right? And they put in the work. And they weren't afraid to put in the work. I don't know anybody that obtained massive success by saying, okay, well, I'm just going to put in like 1 hour a week into this business and then hopefully it'll blow up. It never, ever works like that. Now, if that's all you have to get started, right, is an hour a week, then go ahead and put that hour a week in. Don't wait till you have 10, 20, 30 or 40 hours because that's a big mistake because guess what? You will build on that. When I first started reading, when I first started to get into personal development, right, I wasn't reading 4 or 5 hours a day. I was only reading for like 20 minutes a day, if that. And I don't even think I was doing it consistently, but at least I started. and then you can build on something. Because as you do it and you realize it's not as bad as you thought it was, and you build on that, then you'll do more and more and more. And that 10, 20 minutes of reading a day will turn into 30 minutes. That 30 minutes will turn into an hour. That hour turns into 2 hours, you know? And before you know it, you're completely cutting everything else out, because you've realized that everything else that you were wasting your time with was, like just what I said, a waste of time. Right? But you got to start somewhere. It's too many people that are waiting until they have 2 or 3 hours a day to read before they start reading. And it'll never happen. It's just never going to happen, especially if you're a non-reader, right? But you start off with what you have, and you build from there, and you grow from there, right? So it's just like, you know, even with your business, you may not have 20, 30, 40, 50 hours a week, because maybe you have a job, maybe you got kids, maybe you got family, right? But start off with what you have. But here's the most important thing. Whatever it is that you start with, that you stay consistent with it, right? And let it build and build and build and build. And that's the key to success. That's how you make the chocolate cake, baby. The recipe is there, right? If you guys listen to my calls every single week, I tell the recipe every single week, but I've told it in so many different ways. But guess what? It all leads back to the same thing. Every single week, I've done 105 shows. I come up with a different way to tell you the cake recipe to making chocolate cake, right? And it's hard sometimes, because I got to come up with different ways, make it sound new, creative, but it's all the same recipe. It's all the same thing. If you listen to one of my shows, you listen to all my shows, right? Yeah, I feature different people that help build up your belief in yourself, right? But I'm telling you, it's all the same thing at the end of the day, right? The recipe doesn't ever change. It's the same. Hard work, consistency, dedication, continual striving for improvement. That's it. That's all it is, right? But here's the thing. Most of us want to convince ourselves that the recipe is locked away, because it's easier when we convince ourselves that the recipe is locked away, because that's why we can't make the cake, because somebody's got the recipe or somebody gave us the bad ingredients. Nah. But you got to be real with yourself. Sometimes you got to look in the mirror and be real with yourself and realize that, no, all that's not really true. The recipe is there for that person just like it's there for you. But what are you going to do with it? You know, one of the things that I've learned from studying all these super successful people is that they're no smarter than me or you. Right? Yeah, they look smart because they got billions and millions of dollars behind them. But at the end of the day, they're not really any smarter than me or you. So stop thinking that they're smarter than me and you. Right? The only thing that makes them smart is the fact that they figured out the recipe and they started making the cake. It's too many of you guys that have the ingredients to make the cake, but you're afraid to make the cake. Make the cake. Guess what? If you mess up the cake, it doesn't matter. You can start over again. But you'll never ever perfect the cake until you start making the cake. Don't wait till you think you're going to have the cake perfected. Generally, the first time that you try to make the cake, it's not going to be perfect. All right? It's not going to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. But the more that you make the cake, the more that you're going to master the cake. And if you don't do anything, then you'll never ever master it. You'll never ever get to where you need to get to. So here's the thing. This is the point that I want you to remember. The recipe never changes. The recipe is the same. But you'll never ever get the cake unless you decide to make the cake. All right? Thank you.